One moment, an entire civilization existed. Millions of souls, thousands of cities, 10,000 years of history. The next moment, empty armor clattering to stone floors. No screams, no warnings, no bodies, just absence. This is the story of the Dwemer, the Deep Elves, the people who looked upon the gods and found them wanting. The people who built miracles of bronze and steam, who carved cities into the bones of the earth, who asked questions that reality itself could not answer. And then, in a single heartbeat, they were gone. Not dead, not fled, not transformed, simply erased, as if they had never been, as if the world had blinked and forgotten an entire people existed. You want to understand what happened to them. Everyone does. Scholars have spent lifetimes chasing this mystery. The greatest minds of every era have broken themselves against this question, and still, after thousands of years, we have only theories, guesses, whispers in the dark. But perhaps understanding begins not with their end, but with their beginning, with who they were, what they built, what they believed. Come with me. Let me show you the world they made. Imagine walking through a Dwemer city, not the ruins you know from your adventures, collapsed tunnels and broken machines. No, imagine it alive. Imagine it at its peak. The first thing you notice is the sound, the endless, rhythmic pulse of machinery, like a heartbeat, but vast, mechanical, a city-sized organism breathing through pipes of brass and valves of crystal. Steam hisses from vents in perfect intervals. Gears turn behind walls, their purpose known only to engineers dead for 4,000 years. The second thing you notice is the light. Not torches, not magic, something else. Dwemer cities had no need for fire. They captured the heat of the earth itself, channeled it through systems of such complexity that modern scholars can barely comprehend their function. Amber light glows from crystals set into walls at precise intervals. Not warm, not cold. Simply present, eternal. These lights still burn today, millennia after the last Dwemer hand set them in place. The air tastes of metal and mineral oil, of steam and stone. There is no smell of cooking food, of wood smoke, of the organic mess of surface cities. Everything here is clean, ordered, precise. The Dwemer did not build homes. They built machines for living. Every door opens at exactly the same speed. Every corridor maintains exactly the same temperature. Every fountain recycles water through filters so sophisticated that it emerges purer than mountain springs. They eliminated chaos. They eliminated uncertainty. They eliminated, as much as possible, the random cruelty of nature. And they did it deep underground, where the sun never touched, where the seasons never changed, where time itself seemed to slow in the amber glow of eternal lights. The surface races called them the Deep Elves, Dwemer in the old tongue. They were Mer, elves, but they had long since abandoned the forests and shores their cousins loved. They looked upon the sky and saw only chaos, weather that could not be predicted, stars that offered no answers, gods that demanded worship but provided nothing in return. So they went down into the stone, into the certainty of geology and pressure and the honest heat of the world's core. And there they built Blackreach. You may have seen its ruins, a cavern so vast it contains its own weather systems, bioluminescent fungi casting blue light across an underground sea. But in the time of the Dwemer, Blackreach was more than a cavern. It was a garden. Carefully cultivated ecosystems designed to provide food and materials for cities that never saw the sun. Mushrooms engineered to grow in precise patterns. Fish bred for size and nutrition. Nothing left to chance. Nothing left to nature. Above Blackreach, the great city-states rose. Nachuan Zel, beneath what is now Markarth. Mazulft, with its massive oculory designed to track the stars they claimed not to believe in. Arkanthams, the Tholft, Kagrenzel, names that echo through empty halls now, but once housed millions. Each city was a marvel. Each city was a statement. We do not need your gods. We do not need your sun. We do not need anything but our own minds and our own hands. The Dwemer were not cruel. This is important to understand. They were not villains in the way the Aelids were villains, torturing slaves for sport. They were not conquerors in the way the Nords were conquerors, burning and taking for glory. They were simply certain, absolutely, unshakably certain that they were right, that their way was the only rational way, that worship was weakness, that faith was foolishness, that any problem could be solved with sufficient thought and sufficient engineering. They kept slaves. The Falmer, the snow elves, labored in their depths, blinded and broken. But the Dwemer did not blind them for pleasure. They blinded them for efficiency. Sighted slaves might escape. Sighted slaves might rebel. Blinded slaves were simply more practical. This is perhaps the most unsettling thing about the Dwemer. They committed atrocities not from hatred, but from logic. They unmade an entire race not from cruelty, but from calculation. The screaming of Falmer in the deep places was not music to their ears. It was simply irrelevant. Background noise in the great project of building a perfect civilization. When you walk through Dwemer ruins today, remember this. Remember that every beautiful machine, every elegant corridor, every marvel of engineering was built by hands that saw other living beings as raw material, tools, resources to be optimized. The Dwemer were brilliant. The Dwemer were terrible. And they saw no contradiction between the two. But for all their brilliance, there was one question they could not answer. One problem they could not engineer their way around. The gods. Not whether the gods existed. The Dwemer knew they existed. They had seen the power of the Daedric princes. They had witnessed the miracles of the Aedra. They did not deny these things were real. They denied that these things were worthy of worship. To the Dwemer, the gods were simply another part of nature. Powerful, yes. Dangerous, certainly. But not divine. Not worthy of reverence. The Daedra were just creatures from another dimension. The Aedra were just spirits who had foolishly sacrificed themselves to create a world. Neither deserved prayer. Neither deserved gratitude. This was blasphemy to every other culture on Tamriel. Even the Altmer, who considered themselves superior to most gods, still acknowledged the divine order. But the Dwemer looked upon Akatosh and Mara and Kinnereth and saw only phenomena. Natural forces that could, with sufficient study, be understood, controlled, perhaps even surpassed. And if the gods themselves were merely natural forces, what about the heart of a god? The heart of Lorkhan. The divine spark of the trickster god. The being who convinced the Aedra to create the mortal world, sacrificing their power, their infinity, their very selves. For this crime, the other gods killed him. They tore out his heart and cast it down to the world he had made, and it landed in Morrowind. Deep beneath Red Mountain, pulsing, eternal, a fragment of divinity buried in stone. The Dwemer found it. Imagine that moment. Imagine Dwemer explorers drilling ever deeper, pushing into caverns no mortal had ever seen. And then a chamber, vast beyond comprehension, and at its center, suspended in impossible geometries, a heart, still beating, after eons, still beating. Any other race would have fallen to their knees, would have wept with religious ecstasy, would have built temples and offered sacrifices and thanked the gods for this gift. The Dwemer looked upon the heart of a god and thought, how can we use this? His name was Kagrenak, chief tonal architect of the Dwemer, the greatest mind of a civilization of great minds. He studied the heart for decades. He developed theories. He built tools. 3 tools. Keening, a blade that could cut the tones of reality itself. Sunder, a hammer that could shape those tones. And Wraithguard, a gauntlet that could protect the wielder from energies that would unmake mortal flesh. With these tools, Kagrenak believed, he could tap the heart, draw upon its power, and with that power, the records are unclear. Some say he wanted to create a god, a mechanical god, built from brass and divine energy, loyal to the Dwemer alone. Others say he wanted to make the Dwemer themselves into gods, to elevate an entire race to divinity. Still others believe he wanted to unmake reality itself, to prove once and for all that the universe was merely a machine, and machines could be rebuilt. Whatever his goal, Kagrenak worked. For years, for decades. The greatest minds of the Dwemer assisted him. Resources from every city-state flowed to Red Mountain. The project consumed them, obsessed them. And then came the war. The Chimer, the ancestors of the Dark Elves, had long distrusted their underground neighbors. They worshipped the Daedra, particularly the 3 good Daedra who would one day become the Tribunal. They found Dwemer atheism offensive. They found Dwemer arrogance insufferable. But mostly, they feared what the Dwemer were doing with the heart. War came to Red Mountain. Chimer armies descended into Dwemer tunnels. Dwemer automatons rose to meet them. The greatest conflict in Morrowind's history raged through caverns and corridors, through cities of brass and fields of mushroom and fungus. It was called the War of the First Council, and it would end with the most profound mystery in all of Tamriel's history. The battle reached its peak at Red Mountain itself. Chimer forces, led by the living gods Nerevar and his advisors, pushed into the very chamber of the heart. Kagrenak was there, his tools in hand, his life's work finally ready. What happened next? No one knows. The Chimer soldiers saw a flash of light. Some accounts say golden, others say impossible colors that mortal eyes could not process. There was a sound. Not a sound exactly, but a vibration, a tone, as if reality itself had been struck like a bell. And then, silence. Every Dwemer, not just in Red Mountain, but everywhere on Tamriel, vanished. In Morrowind, in Skyrim, in Hammerfell, on islands and in depths and in cities no surface dweller had ever seen. Millions of souls, gone in an instant. Their machines kept running. Their lights kept glowing. Their automatons kept patrolling, following orders from masters who no longer existed. Food rotted on plates. Tools lay where they had been dropped. In one city, they found a forge still hot, metal still molten, waiting for a smith who would never return. No bodies, no bones, no ash. Not even the residue of powerful magic. The Dwemer were simply absent. As if the universe had decided they had never existed and was slowly catching up to that decision. 4,000 years have passed since that day, and still, no one knows what happened. Did Kagranak succeed? Did he ascend the Dwemer to godhood, pulling them out of the mortal plane entirely? Are they still out there, somewhere, existing as beings of pure thought and energy? Or did he fail? Did the tools malfunction, unmake the Dwemer entirely, erase them so completely that even death could not claim them? Did the gods strike them down at last, punishing their arrogance with annihilation? Or was it something else entirely? Something so strange, so alien, that our mortal minds cannot even conceive of it. The machines still hum. The lights still glow. The automatons still walk their eternal patrols. And somewhere, deep beneath Red Mountain, the heart of Lorcan still beats. Waiting. 4,000 years of silence. 4,000 years of questions without answers. And yet, in all that time, we have gathered fragments, clues, whispers from the edge of oblivion. Let me share them with you. Let me show you the theories that scholars have constructed, the evidence they have found, the conclusions they have drawn. And let me show you why each answer only leads to deeper horror. Theory 1. Divine punishment. This is the explanation most surface dwellers prefer. The gods, offended by Dwemer arrogance, finally struck them down. Justice delivered from on high. The natural order restored. It is a comforting theory. It suggests that the universe has rules, that hubris is punished, that those who challenge the divine will face consequences. But it does not fit the evidence. When the gods destroy, they leave marks. When Alduin returns, he leaves fire and ruin. When Molag Bal reaches into our world, he leaves corruption and despair. When the tribunal drew upon the heart's power, they became living gods, changed, transformed, elevated. The Dwemer left nothing. No bodies to show they died. No souls in any realm of oblivion. The ideal masters, who collect souls with endless hunger, have no Dwemer among their captives. The soul cairn, that vast prison of the dead, holds no deep elves. If the gods destroyed them, where did they go? If they were killed, where are their ghosts? Where are their spirits? Where is any trace that they ever lived and died like mortal beings? The gods punish with fire and flood and plague. They do not punish with absence. Theory 2. Kagranak succeeded. Perhaps the chief tonal architect achieved exactly what he intended. Perhaps he used the heart of Lorcan to elevate his entire race to godhood. Perhaps, even now, the Dwemer exist as beings of pure consciousness, floating somewhere beyond mortal perception. This theory has supporters among the mystically inclined. After all, the tribunal used the same heart to become living gods. Why couldn't Kagranak do the same, but for everyone? But there are problems. The tribunal needed centuries to master the heart's power. They approached it slowly, carefully, drawing energy in measured amounts. And even then, their godhood was imperfect, dependent on regular pilgrimages to the heart, vulnerable to disruption. Kagrenak attempted something instantaneous, something that affected millions simultaneously. And the tribunal were not present when he struck. They arrived moments after, finding only empty armor. More troubling still, if the Dwemer became gods, why have they never returned? Why have they never spoken? The tribunal walked among their people. Talos built an empire. Even the Daedric princes, alien and unknowable, still communicate with mortals. 4,000 years of silence from an entire civilization of newly made gods? Unless they cannot speak. Unless whatever they became is so different, so removed from mortal existence, that communication is impossible. Unless godhood, for the Dwemer, was not an elevation, but a transformation into something that can no longer be called life, or death, or anything we have words for. Theory 3. Zero sum. This is where the philosophy becomes strange, where we must speak of concepts that bend mortal minds. In the deepest mysteries of the Elder Scrolls universe, there exists a state called Chim. It is the recognition that all reality is a dream, that the universe is the thought of a sleeping God, and every soul within it is merely a fragment of that dream. Most who realize this truth simply cease to exist. They understand that they are not real, and reality agrees. They zero sum. They subtract themselves from existence so completely that they were never there to begin with. But some, very few, achieve Chim. They recognize the dream and yet maintain their sense of self. They declare, "I am," even while knowing that I is an illusion. And in doing so, they become something more than mortal. Talos achieved Chim. Vivek may have achieved it. What if Kagrenak, in his arrogance, tried to force this revelation upon an entire race? What if millions of Dwemer, in a single instant, suddenly understood the true nature of reality? What if they saw that they were merely thoughts in a dreaming mind, characters in a story, numbers in an equation? And what if they could not maintain their sense of self? What if, confronted with the truth, they simply agreed with it? We do not exist, they realized, and reality said, correct. Not death, not transformation, simply a correction, an error fixed, a dream that forgot one of its details. This would explain the absence. You cannot find Dwemer souls because there are no Dwemer souls. There never were. The universe has been edited, and only the physical artifacts, too substantial to simply vanish, remain as evidence that something was once there. But wait, there is a problem with this theory too. One Dwemer survived. His name is Yagram Bagarn, and he is still alive. When the disappearance occurred, Yagram was not on Tamriel. He was in the outer realms, the spaces between dimensions, accessible only through the most advanced Dwemer technology. He was researching something. We do not know what. When he returned, his people were gone. Imagine that moment. Imagine stepping back into your home after a long journey, expecting to find your civilization exactly as you left it. Your colleagues, your family, your entire world, and finding only silence, machines humming, lights glowing, an emptiness where millions should have stood. Yagram searched. For years, for decades he searched. He walked through cities that should have bustled with activity. He called out names that no one answered. He checked every theory, every possibility, every mad hope that somewhere, somehow, his people had survived. He found nothing. The solitude drove him to despair. The despair drove him to recklessness. He contracted corpus, the divine disease of Red Mountain, the plague that warps flesh and destroys minds. Most victims become shambling monsters, their bodies twisted beyond recognition, their minds gone forever. Yagrum was different. Dwemer Fear, the greatest wizard of the Telvanni, took him in, stabilized him, kept his mind intact even as his body swelled and deformed. And so Yagrum lives still, the last Dwemer, bloated and immobile, his legs gone, his body a ruin, but his mind, his brilliant Dwemer mind, still functioning, still remembering, still mourning. He has had 4,000 years to consider what happened to his people. 4,000 years of analysis and theory and desperate hope. He does not know. The greatest Dwemer mind still living, with 40 centuries to ponder the question, has no answer. He has theories, like everyone else, but he does not know. And if he does not know, what hope do we have? I must tell you now about the silence. When you enter a Dwemer ruin, you notice many things. The scale of the architecture, the complexity of the machinery, the amber glow of lights that have burned for 4,000 years. But more than anything, you notice the silence. It is not ordinary silence. It is not the quiet of an empty house or a still night. It is heavier than that, deeper, as if the air itself remembers sound and is deliberately refusing to carry it. Some scholars call it tonal residue. They believe that whatever Kagranak did involved sound, or something like sound, operating on a level that mortal ears cannot perceive. The Dwemer called their magic tonal architecture. They believed reality could be shaped by the right frequencies, the right vibrations, the right harmonics. When you stand in a Dwemer ruin, you are standing in the echo of that final note, the last tone Kagranak ever played, still reverberating after 4,000 years through corridors that remember what your ears cannot hear. And sometimes, rarely, in the deepest places, people report hearing something. Not a sound exactly, more like the memory of a sound. The shape a sound would leave if it passed through your mind without touching your ears. A hum, vast and low and endless. Like a machine running beyond the walls of reality. Like a heart beating in a chest of brass. Like millions of voices trying to speak a word they no longer remember. What happened to the Dwemer? After 4,000 years, we still do not know. Every theory explains some evidence and fails to explain other evidence. Every answer raises more questions. Every certainty crumbles upon examination. They may be gods now, floating in eternal bliss beyond mortal comprehension. They may be nothing, erased so completely that even their souls were never real. They may be trapped in the Numidium, a collective consciousness forever bound to brass and purpose. They may be somewhere else entirely, in a state we have no words for, experiencing something we cannot imagine. Or perhaps, and this is the thought that wakes scholars in the middle of the night, perhaps they are still here, right here, all around us, existing in some way we cannot perceive, occupying the same space, the same time, but utterly unreachable. Perhaps when you walk through Dwemer ruins, you are not alone. Perhaps millions of souls walk with you, screaming words you cannot hear, reaching with hands you cannot feel, desperate to tell you what happened, what went wrong, what Kagrenak did in that final moment. Perhaps the silence is not absence at all. Perhaps the silence is a crowd too vast to comprehend, all trying to speak at once. Let me take you into the ruins now. Not the history, not the theories, the ruins themselves as they exist today, 4,000 years after the last Dwemer voice fell silent. Let me show you what waits in the dark. The automatons still function. This is perhaps the most unsettling detail of all. 4,000 years without maintenance, without repair, without any guiding intelligence, and still the machines walk their patrols. Still, the centurions guard their posts. Still, the spiders skitter through corridors on legs of brass and malice. How is this possible? Dwemer engineering was brilliant, but no engineering is eternal. Metal fatigues. Gears wear. Steam pressure fluctuates. Any machine, no matter how well built, should fail within centuries at most. But these machines do not fail. Some scholars believe the automatons draw power from the same source as the eternal lights: geothermal energy, channeled through systems too sophisticated for us to fully understand. This explains their continued function. It does not explain their continued purpose. The centurions do not simply move. They patrol. They follow routes. They respond to intruders with lethal force. They protect chambers that have been empty for 4 millennia, guard doors that lead to nothing but dust, maintain security protocols for masters who will never return. Why? If they were simply machines running down their final commands, they would have completed those commands centuries ago. If they were simply automatons following basic instructions, they would stand in place until they finally broke down. Instead, they adapt. They learn. Adventurers report centurions that remember previous encounters, that change patrol routes after intrusions, that seem to communicate with each other through means we cannot detect. Something is still directing them. Something is still issuing orders. Something, somewhere in those brass shells, is still thinking. But the Dwemer are gone. So who is giving the commands? The spheres are the worst. Dwemer spheres, those rolling constructs that unfold into blade-wielding nightmares, are found in almost every ruin. They patrol the corridors, curled into innocuous balls until an intruder approaches. Then they rise, unfold, and attack with precision that should be impossible for mindless machines. But here is what disturbs scholars most. The spheres repair each other. Expeditions have documented this. A damaged sphere will roll to a maintenance alcove. Another sphere will approach. And somehow, without hands designed for delicate work, without tools visible to the naked eye, the second sphere will fix the first. Replace gears, reconnect pipes, restore function. Then both spheres will resume their patrols, as if nothing had happened. No one taught them this. No one programmed them for mutual maintenance. The Dwemer built them to fight, to patrol, to protect. Somewhere in the 4,000 years since, the spheres learned to help each other survive. They evolved. And if they evolved that skill, what else might they have learned? Then there are the ghosts. Not Dwemer ghosts. We have established that no Dwemer souls exist in any accessible realm, but ghosts nonetheless. Spirits of adventurers who died in the ruins, shades of Falmer slaves who never escaped, echoes of the Chimer soldiers who fought in the War of the First Council. These ghosts behave strangely. In most haunted places, spirits replay their deaths. They walk through walls they remember as doors. They scream warnings about dangers long past. They are echoes, fundamentally, recordings of trauma, playing on loop. In Dwemer ruins, the ghosts are aware. They know they are dead. They know where they are. And they know something else, something they try desperately to communicate to the living who stumble into their domain. But they cannot speak it. Witnesses describe ghosts that mouth words frantically, silently, desperately. Ghosts that gesture toward walls, toward machines, toward the depths below. Ghosts that weep without tears and scream without sound. Something in the ruins prevents them from communicating. The same tonal residue that fills the air, the same impossible silence that weighs on every corridor. It extends to the dead as well. They know something. They have seen something, and they cannot tell us what it is. Only their fear is visible, and their fear is absolute. The deeper you go, the stranger things become. The upper levels of most Dwemer ruins are merely unsettling. Functional machines, amber lights, the weight of ancient emptiness. Dangerous, certainly, but comprehensible. You are walking through a dead city. The danger comes from traps and automatons, things that can be fought, avoided, overcome. But the lower levels, below a certain depth, it varies by ruin, but there is always a threshold. The architecture changes. The precise geometric corridors give way to something else, something organic. Walls that curve in ways that hurt the eye. Passages that seem longer walking one direction than the other. Rooms that are larger on the inside than the outside. Some scholars believe these deeper sections were experimental. Kagranak and his colleagues testing the limits of tonal architecture, reshaping space itself according to mathematical principles we do not understand. Others believe something went wrong, that the energies released by the disappearance warped reality in the places closest to their source, that these twisted passages are scars, wounds in the fabric of the world that have never fully healed. And still others believe something lives down there. The expeditions that have reached the deepest levels and returned report experiences that defy rational explanation. Time behaves incorrectly. Explorers emerge from ruins believing they have been inside for hours, only to discover that days have passed. Others experience the opposite, weeks of subjective time compressed into a single night. Timepieces stop working. Hunger and thirst do not follow normal patterns. Sounds appear from nowhere. Not the hum of machinery, something else. Whispers that almost form words. Footsteps that follow but produce nothing when you turn around. Breathing, vast and slow, as if the ruins themselves are a living thing. And then there are the visions. Explorers in the deepest Dwemer ruins report seeing things that cannot be there. Cities populated with living Dwemer, going about their business, completely unaware of the intruders watching them. Battles frozen in mid-strike. Chimer and Dwemer locked in combat that never resolves. Kagranak himself, standing before the heart, his hammer raised, his mouth open in a word that never finishes. These visions cannot be touched, cannot be interacted with. They play out like memories, someone else's memories, projected onto air and stone. Are they echoes? Recordings somehow preserved in the tonal architecture? Or are they windows, brief glimpses into wherever the Dwemer actually went? And if they are windows, can the Dwemer see back through them? I must tell you about Blackreach now, the place beneath the places. You may have visited Blackreach. Many adventurers have. It is vast beyond comprehension. A cavern system large enough to hold cities, lit by bioluminescent fungi and the glow of Dwemer technology, silent as a held breath. But Blackreach is not empty. The Falmer infest it now, the twisted descendants of the Snow Elves, blind and savage, filling the space their former masters left behind. They build their crude camps in Dwemer corridors. They hunt the strange creatures that have adapted to the eternal darkness. They worship things they cannot see, gods of sound and smell and touch. But the Falmer avoids certain places. In the deepest parts of Blackreach, there are structures the Falmer will not approach, towers that rise from the cavern floor, sealed tight, humming with power that has not diminished in 4,000 years. The Falmer give these places wide berth. They hiss and snarl if driven too close. They would rather die than enter. What do they know? What do their degraded senses perceive that ours do not? The Falmer have lived in these depths for millennia. They have had time to learn the geography of darkness, to understand what things should be avoided. And they avoid those towers with a fear that seems almost religious. There is a legend among the scholars who study Dwemer ruins, a story passed from expedition to expedition, never written in official reports, never acknowledged in academic circles. They call it the tone. Some who have gone deep enough, deeper than most return from, report hearing something in the moment before they flee. Not the whispers, not the footsteps, something else. A sound that is not a sound. A vibration that bypasses the ears entirely and resonates in the bones, the blood, the soul itself. A single, sustained note, impossibly low, impossibly complex, containing harmonics that the human mind is not equipped to process. Those who have heard it describe the experience differently. Some call it beautiful, the most perfect sound ever created, a frequency that touches something primal and divine. Others call it horrifying, a noise that speaks of endings, of erasure, of the moment before everything becomes nothing. All of them agree on one thing. The tone is not a recording. It is not an echo. It is being produced, actively, continuously, somewhere in the depths. Something is still playing Kagrenak's final note, and it has been playing for 4,000 years. What if the disappearance was not an event? What if it was a process? What if Kagrenak's strike upon the heart did not instantly transform or destroy the Dwemer? What if it began something? A change that is still occurring, still unfolding, still spreading through whatever the Dwemer have become. This would explain the tone, the original sound, still reverberating, still doing its work. The Dwemer caught in an eternal moment of transformation, forever becoming but never arriving. It would explain the automatons, directed by minds that exist between states, giving orders from a place that is neither here nor there. It would explain the ghosts' terror. They have seen what is happening. They have glimpsed the space between spaces, where an entire civilization hangs suspended in the moment of their own metamorphosis. And it would explain why Yagrum survived. He was outside reality when the tone began. When he returned, it was already playing, but he had not been present for its first note. He was out of sync, excluded from the harmony that claimed his people. He has spent 4,000 years listening to a song he cannot hear. His people have spent 4,000 years singing it. The Dwemer believed they could understand everything. That was their fundamental faith, not in gods, but in comprehension. They looked upon the universe and saw a machine, a system, a puzzle that could be solved with sufficient intellect. They were wrong. Not because the universe is magical or divine or beyond mortal understanding, but because some solutions are worse than the problems they solve. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. Some questions, once answered, become prisons for those who ask them. Kagrenak sought to use the heart of a god, to tap into divinity itself, to harness power that was never meant for mortal hands. And perhaps he succeeded. Perhaps, in that final moment, he achieved exactly what he intended. But he achieved it for everyone. Every Dwemer. Everywhere. All at once. No one asked if they wanted transcendence. No one consulted the mothers and children, the artists and laborers, the ordinary people who simply wanted to live their ordinary lives. Kagrenak made a choice for his entire civilization, and now they are all, wherever they are, whatever they have become, forever. The lights still glow in the depths. The machines still walk their endless patrols. The silence still presses against the ears of all who enter. And somewhere, beyond perception, beyond understanding, beyond the walls of reality itself, the Dwemer are still there, still singing Kagrenak's note, still becoming, still waiting. For what? Perhaps for someone to hear them. Perhaps for someone to finish what Kagrenak started. Perhaps for the tone to finally resolve into something, into completion, into oblivion, into a new reality that will replace everything we know. Or perhaps they are simply waiting, and the waiting is all there is. 4,000 years. That is how long the Dwemer have been gone. 4,000 years of empty cities. 4,000 years of unanswered questions. 4,000 years of machines walking patrols for masters who vanished between one heartbeat and the next. And yet, in all that time, the world has not forgotten them. How could it? Their ruins dot every province. Their artifacts surface in markets and museums and private collections. Their automatons still kill the unwary, still guard treasures no living being remembers hiding. The Dwemer are gone, but they are not absent. Their shadow falls across Tamriel still. Let me tell you what they left behind. The Ethereum. Deep in the Reach, beneath mountains that were ancient when the Nords were young, the Dwemer discovered something remarkable. A crystal that glowed with the light of Aetherius itself, the realm of magic, the source of all mystical energy. They called it Ethereum, and they guarded its secret jealously. 4 cities controlled the Ethereum supply: Arkanthams, Raldthar, Mizulft, and Betharzel. For centuries they cooperated, sharing the precious resource, using it to create artifacts of impossible power. Then they began to fight. The Ethereum Wars tore Dwemer society apart. City turned against city. Brothers killed brothers over glowing crystals. The greatest minds of a civilization devoted themselves to destruction rather than creation. Some say this internal conflict weakened the Dwemer, distracted them, made them desperate enough to attempt Kagrenak's mad experiment. If they had not fought over Ethereum, perhaps they would not have needed a divine solution to their problems. The Ethereum remains, scattered through ruins, hidden in vaults, waiting for those brave or foolish enough to seek it. And those who find it discover what the Dwemer learned. Some treasures are not worth their cost. The Falmer. We have spoken of them already. The twisted remnants of the snow elves, blinded and debased by Dwemer cruelty. But consider them now not as victims, but as inheritors. When the Dwemer vanished, the Falmer remained. Chained in darkness, yes. Broken in body and mind, certainly. But alive. And in the millennia since, they have spread through every Dwemer ruin, every underground passage, every lightless corner of the world below. They are the Dwemer's true legacy. Not the machines, not the artifacts, the Falmer. An entire race, transformed by Dwemer arrogance into something unrecognizable. An entire people, still suffering the consequences of choices made by masters who no longer exist. The snow elves were beautiful once, proud, magical. They built crystal cities and worshipped Ari-El and thought themselves blessed among the races of Mer. Now they crawl through darkness, eating fungus and flesh, worshipping sounds they cannot understand, living and dying in ruins they did not build. This is what the Dwemer left behind. Not just machines, a curse. A living reminder that actions have consequences beyond imagination, beyond intention, beyond the lifetime of those who act. Every Falmer that hunts in the deep places is a testament to Dwemer cruelty. Every blind eye is an accusation. Every generation born into darkness is a sentence that never ends. The Dwemer are gone. The Falmer remain. And they will remain long after the last machine finally stops. The knowledge. For all their flaws, the Dwemer understood things no other race has matched. Their engineering was millennia ahead of its time, and remains so. Their understanding of tonal architecture, of the fundamental frequencies that underlie reality, has never been equaled. Fragments of this knowledge survive, in libraries sealed against time, in lexicons that require special devices to read, in schematics etched on metal plates that scholars spend lifetimes trying to decipher. The Dwemer wrote extensively. They documented everything, recorded everything, preserved everything with the obsessive thoroughness of a people who believed knowledge was the only true value. But their language is difficult. Their concepts are foreign. Their assumptions about reality do not match our own. Reading Dwemer texts is like trying to understand a conversation between beings who think in shapes and sounds rather than words. Still, we try. Every year, scholars make small advances. A new word understood, a new principle grasped, a new machine partially reconstructed. And every year, some of those scholars go mad. The Dwemer knew things that mortal minds struggle to contain. Their understanding pressed against the edges of what consciousness can hold. Those who delve too deeply into Dwemer mysteries sometimes emerge changed, speaking in frequencies, seeing patterns in everything, unable to stop calculating, analyzing, reducing the world to numbers and tones. They become, in some small way, like the Dwemer themselves. And like the Dwemer, they often vanish, not physically, but mentally, present in body, absent in all the ways that matter. The knowledge is there for the taking, but the price is sanity. The price is self. The price is everything that makes you who you are. And then there is the Numidium. We spoke of it before, the brass god, the mechanical deity, the vessel that may or may not contain the collective consciousness of an entire race. But the Numidium story did not end with the Dwemer. Tiber Septim found it, or rather, he found its pieces, scattered and incomplete, missing the heart that once powered it. He made a deal with Vivek, one of the living gods who had used that same heart for millennia, and received a substitute power source, something almost as good. And with the Numidium, Tiber Septim conquered the world. The Altmer of Somerset Isle were unconquerable. Their magic was too strong, their defenses too sophisticated, their armies too disciplined. Generations of warriors had broken themselves against Somerset's shores. The Numidium ended the war in an hour. It walked across the sea. It looked upon the Altmer's defenses and said, "No." And the defenses simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, negated, removed from reality as if they had never been built. The Altmer surrendered. They had no choice. How do you fight something that can deny your existence? Since then, the Numidium has been used again and again, by the Thalmor, by the Blades, by forces that thought they could control a god. Each time, it has done what was asked, and each time, reality has fractured a little more around its brass feet. The dragon break at the end of the Second Era, the impossible contradictions in historical records, the moments when time itself shattered into multiple simultaneous timelines. All of these trace back to the Numidium, to Kagranak's final creation, to the Dwemer's ultimate legacy. They built a machine that breaks time, and we keep turning it on. Why do we do it? Why do adventurers descend into Dwemer ruins, knowing the dangers? Why do scholars study Dwemer texts, knowing the cost? Why do empires seek the Numidium, knowing it warps reality itself? Because we cannot help ourselves. The Dwemer dangled a promise before the world, and we have never stopped reaching for it. The promise of understanding. The promise of control. The promise that if we just think hard enough, work long enough, sacrifice enough, we can become like them. We can master reality. We can transcend our limitations. We can build our own gods and stride across the world like titans. The Dwemer proved it was possible, and we cannot forget. It does not matter that they vanished. It does not matter that we do not know if their fate was triumph or tragedy. The possibility exists. The door is open. And we keep walking through it, hoping our ending will be different. Perhaps it will be. Perhaps we will succeed where they failed. Perhaps we will find the key they missed, solve the equation they botched, achieve the transcendence they only glimpsed. Or perhaps we will join them. Perhaps one day another race will walk through the ruins of our civilization. They will find our machines still running, our lights still burning, our constructs still guarding empty halls. They will wonder what happened to us. They will construct theories. They will search for survivors. And they will never find us. Because we will be gone, like the Dwemer, into whatever waits beyond the final tone. The lights are dimming now. Not literally. Dwemer lights never dim. But in your mind, the amber glow is fading. The hum of machinery is growing distant. The weight of 4,000 years is settling into something softer, quieter, more peaceful. This is how it feels to walk away from a Dwemer ruin. The gradual return to normality. The slow release of tension you did not know you were holding. The world above, with its sun and wind and simple mortal concerns, calling you back. The Dwemer are gone. This is the truth we must live with. Whatever happened to them, transcendence or oblivion, godhood or erasure, eternal singing or eternal silence, they are not coming back. Their cities will continue to crumble. Their machines will eventually fail. Their lights will finally go dark. And one day, perhaps, the questions will stop mattering. One day, the mystery will be just another old story, a tale told to children, a legend without weight. The Dwemer will join the other vanished peoples of Tamriel, the Aelids, the left-handed elves, the countless civilizations that rose and fell before history learned to record them. They will become a dream, a memory of a memory, a whisper in the dark that no one quite remembers hearing. But not yet. For now, the ruins remain. The automatons still walk. The tone still plays in depths no living being has reached. The mystery still pulls at curious minds, still claims the lives of those who seek too deeply, still offers its impossible promise to anyone willing to pay the price. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the mystery itself is the point. Perhaps the Dwemer's greatest gift was not their technology, or their knowledge, or their artifacts. Perhaps it was the question: what would you sacrifice for transcendence? How far would you go to understand the universe? What would you become if becoming meant losing everything you are? The Dwemer answered those questions. We are still deciding. Sleep now. Let the amber light fade. Let the hum of machinery become a lullaby. Let the weight of 4,000 years become a blanket, soft and warm, pressing you gently into dreams. The Dwemer are gone, but in your sleep, perhaps you will meet them. Perhaps you will walk through their cities at their height, see their wonders in their glory, hear the tone as they heard it, not as horror, but as invitation. Perhaps you will understand what they became. Perhaps you will choose to join them. Or perhaps you will simply rest and wake in the morning to a world still full of mysteries, still full of questions, still waiting for someone brave enough to seek the answers. The ruins will be there when you wake. The lights will still glow. The machines will still walk their endless patrols. And the silence will still hold its secrets. Close your eyes, listen to the quiet, and remember the Dwemer. They were here once. They built wonders. They asked questions. And then they were gone.